What's up, everyone? My name is Jordan Brooks, him, his, and I'm the Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Multicultural Student Success in the College of Design, and this is Diverse People of Design.
Solid. Awesome. I hope you're ready to talk big. Well, now I'd really like to get more into this formal part of our discussion of this podcast. And this is a little ambiguous, but hopefully fairly deep. My very first question for you is, who are you?
Who are you? So, I'm a creator. And it's interesting. I have honestly been thinking about that a lot. When folks would ask you, who are you? What do you do? All those things. And I think saying that I'm a creator is the piece that sums it up the best. How I got to that is just thinking about like the history of Black folks in general, and thinking about how most of what we experience in our life, right? Most of what we know historically, Black people have been a part of part of its creation, right? So I think there's a piece to acknowledging my ancestors as creators that's there. If we go to a spiritual space, regardless of whatever faith, if you are a person of faith, at the end of it, most of them always say somehow that you are also in alignment or in connection to the spiritual realm, to the spiritual being who creates things. So then if that's the case, then that means that I will be a creator as well. I choose to make art. I choose to create spaces for people to come together in community, to express hopefully their most authentic self, or to at least maybe find or get themselves on the path to being able to figure out who that is and then being able to express it. I create opportunities for me, for my family, right? I'm trying to create opportunities for my children, right? For other folks' children in this college, in the community that I work with. So yeah, when I think about who am I, the one word or easiest way for me to put that all together is to say that I'm a creator.
First of all, I think that it's so cool that that is the way that you see yourself and that's the way you choose to identify. Also, incredibly well thought out. I reflect back on my own heritage a lot, but I love that perspective of your ancestors, your past, how it can influence your future, and how you can take that inspiration and apply it. Thanks for sharing. That's awesome. That almost perfectly leads into my next question, which is, what are your other identities?
The different cultural identities, I guess that you could say, are that I'm racially I'm Black, ethnically I would say that I'm African American, or right, you could say displaced or stolen African in America. Gender wise, I'm a cisgender male, heterosexual. Socioeconomic status. I grew up in a lower SES, and I'm more so in the middle SES space now, especially with the education. I was first gen college student. Faith wise, I'm kind of questioning. I grew up Christian, Baptist specifically, but I went to Catholic grade school. I have folks who are Muslim in my family, so I've been influenced by all of that. And so I'm kind of on a different kind of spiritual path at the moment, temporarily able-bodied, but I know there are tons of different health things that are knocking at my door. So again, that's why I say I'm temporarily able-bodied. I'm trying to phase that off as best as I can, as much as I can, in the ways I can. I think that's the majority of the different identities. Trying to think through all of them. Yeah.
Do you think? Well, because I love how you introduce yourself as a creator. And so what kind of work do you do? I really loved what you shared while you were saying in front of that. So that's an option to talk about.
Yeah, I forget that fast enough. Smiling. What was I saying? What was I saying? I forget.
You were saying that you have this new project where you are painting.
Yeah. Okay, I'm so sorry, but my mind. So how it shows up for me as a creator. The first is that I make art, my own art. So I like to draw with like pen and ink. I like to paint, and I like to do digital artwork. And one of the projects that I'm starting right now is I want to do interviews with different Black and brown people in the community in Ames and Des Moines. And I want to just do these interviews with like folks who I guess don't know, they're not the person that's typically on the news, right? They're not typically the person who we think of as our heroes and the names that go down in history. But right, I want to be able to spread their names and spread their stories and hopefully let their stories and names influence other people. So what I want to do is as I'm interviewing them, also like start to create like a portrait of them and paint them. I think that would be really cool to capture it. So like on one page, there'll be their painting and then the other page would be the synopsis, right, of the story and interview of who they are. Another big thing for me right now, with me being a creator, is I want to do a gallery show before the end of 2020. And I'm titling that show Between Reed and Wayne. And so the town I grew up in, Erie, Pennsylvania, the street I lived on as a kid was East 11th Street, and that was between Wayne Street and Reed Street. And so I'm going to title it Between Reed and Wayne, and I want to kind of talk about what were all of a bunch of just the different experiences that I went through and the things that were really impactful and kind of shaped me in being who I am kind of today. And so I kind of want to put that together in some type of a gallery show. I haven't done my own gallery show or exhibit since I graduated undergrad and had to do my senior exhibit. So I thought the best way to maybe reintroduce myself as an artist again in that way is to do an exhibit on my upbringing. But outside of that, I also started my own business, and it's called knwslf, and it's spelled knwslf. So taking out the vowels, right? But it stands for KN is knowledge, W is wisdom, SL is self-love, and the F is fellowship. And I think knowledge, wisdom, self-love, and fellowship are the four most essential pieces to us gaining knowledge of self and an awareness of who we are and our connection to our community. And so through that, I use creative art exercises and create different spaces for people to come together and kind of go through this self journey, right? We just use art and other cool creative ways to make it happen.
You heard the man. That is knwslf.art on Instagram. It is so good. His art is amazing. Go check him out. The profile is just fabulous. Highly recommend. Anyways, that reminds me, you mentioned graduation from higher education, and I don't know what you have your bachelor's or your master's degree in. You have your master's too?
Yeah. So I studied, the degree is called Art and Technology, and I was a double major in psychology, and that was my bachelor's degree at Allegheny College. So it's essentially like a computer art degree. It had a little bit of video production and things and stuff in that as well. And that was undergrad. My master's I got from Slippery Rock University, and it is a counseling-based student affairs and higher education degree. And I actually just recently got accepted to Iowa State to start my doctoral program in the fall of 2020 for a PhD in education, and my specific focus will be social and cultural studies of education.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Yeah.
How do you think your identities influence your work, or do they influence your work?
I think my identities influence my work all the time, right? Being the director of equity and inclusion, I think it's really important for me to be conscious of my cultural and social identities. I think it's really important for me to be conscious of how I show up in different spaces, right? And so what I mean by that is how am I being conscious of toxic masculinity and how masculinity can present itself within spaces when I'm working with people of different genders? Am I being conscious of heteronormative behavior, right? And how I've kind of grown up in a space where my sexuality isn't necessarily in question, right? But at the same time, am I being conscious of the intersectionality and how those things are, how my different identities kind of build on one another and create different advantages or disadvantages for me? And then also, right, how am I being aware of how people are making sense or meaning of my different identities? So it shows up all the time, right? I think what it helps me with, especially in this work, is there's already a little bit of a sensitivity, right, to being critical of what normative behaviors are in our society. There's already a sensitivity to what it looks like to not be treated equally, to not experience equity. But at the same time, some of my identities make me not aware of things, right? You know, even just in this moment saying not aware, I had to pause and say, I was almost going to say, my identities make me not see certain things, right? But that could be ableist language, right? So just to be aware, so even that mental moment of going, like, let me think what's the most appropriate way for me to potentially say that, right? Like my consciousness of my identities and thinking about how I present, how I think, how I create space is something that's constantly resurfacing for me.
It is honestly so fascinating to hear your point of view and how you approach different situations and environments based off of your social awareness. And I think that it's respectable that you want to ensure inclusivity to the extent of personal internal reflection to improve who you are first before anything else. It's really awesome.
Yeah.
Do you feel treated differently from others based on a particular identity?
Yes, I do. I think the identity though that I'm most aware of now is my identity as a staff person in the college. And I think it's interesting because there's my male identity, there's my black male identity, right? But I think when you add them now, I'm a black male with a certain position within the campus, right? Within our college, it does create, I think, somewhat some dissonance, right, for some people, right? There's your expectation of who are the folks who will be here, right? But who are the people who work within different spaces within the college, right? Or even in the community, right? When I tell people what I do, it then creates this interesting kind of balance. I'm trying to give an actual example. For instance, every time, for the most part, every time I tell anyone that I do equity and inclusion at a college, their next thing to do is want to talk with me about any random social justice issue in the world, right? And I think somehow it creates this sense that they should be able to feel secure with me, right? Which is nice. But then it also creates there's this expectancy from them that then, since that's my work, then, right, that whatever their biased, unbiased, not bigoted view, right, that I should be able to talk about that with them. And that I have to in that moment. And the part of me wants to always be like, you know what, since I do this for a living, I should actually send you a bill, right? An invoice for this moment right now. This isn't actually something that I should just be doing with you on my off time, right? So I think that's an interesting way in which that I experienced it. But another way that I think I get treated is I think there are students who are looking for me, right? I think there are staff and there are faculty also who are looking for me. And so my different identities make people go, there's a sigh of relief, right, that some people have when they see me. Family members, when they're bringing their students here, I think there's a sigh of relief and a sense of like, there's potentially a comfort, right, with some of my identities that are visible, right, for folks. And so there's that back and forth, right? There's the things that are negative, there's the things that are indifferent, and then there's stuff that makes me feel good, right? Because again, for me, I want to create that type of space, right? So for those folks who my identities are a signal to them, right, that maybe they can be in community with me, that's a positive.
I think that you're absolutely right. There is definitely, for some marginalized communities, a sigh of relief when they see someone like them at a predominantly white institution like Iowa State University. And I think that that is so amazing that that's something that you can recognize and something that you can pinpoint. Also, I think that people in your position as a director of inclusivity and equity, I think that you, as well as your predecessor, Audrey, were incredibly well trained in and this is something we literally just talked about, but you're just so incredibly well trained on social cues and how to create inviting spaces for people. And so that's why I just think it's so invaluable to have a person of your position on a campus anywhere, because you know what to look for in someone who may not otherwise get the chance to feel at home. Personally, in my experience, Audrey, your predecessor, she was the one who made me want to come to Iowa State University. There's just such a warmness to her that she saw me and she cared about me right off the bat. And I think that is what I was talking about as a director of multicultural student success, that you know and you can see that almost this is what I meant, like almost that discontentment, that feeling, you it's like you have these x-ray goggles on people's feelings, and you just know when someone is not 100% into it. And when I first came to Iowa State, I was not 100% into it. So I think that what you're doing is just invaluable, and I think that is a really good way to put it. So thank you. Anyways, back on track. Is there a specific moment in your life that made you realize an identity you hold? And if yes, what happened?
Okay. So yes, I think the identity that I kind of came to realize, right, was my Blackness. And I do want to separate out that my Blackness, I kind of experienced it in two different ways. And the first being, right, like I grew up in a very loving and comforting kind of family. And my Blackness was beautiful then, right? And I learned about great Black African American people, great African Caribbean people, right? Just across the diaspora. And my concept of Blackness was great and beautiful. But then maybe one of the most defining moments that kind of taught me about my Blackness in a way in which that other people can feel it actually happened in, this was third grade at this point. Third grade. So I'm born in August, and I actually share birthdays with Bill Clinton. And so growing up, Bill Clinton was actually the president when I was a kid. And so, of course, like any kid, when people ask you what you want to be, you find out that you and Bill Clinton have the same birthday. You're like, yeah, I want to be the president of the United States, right? And so I remember, though, my teacher telling me that I can't be the president of the United States. And I was like, man, why, right? And we're in our social studies class, we're doing all the things, right? And she just kind of like flat out like, no, you won't be the president of the United States. But what happened for me is I rationalized it because we had just learned that, you know, you have to be a certain age, you have to be US born, and all those things, right, to be the president of the United States. I was born in the Philippines, but I was born on a US military base. But again, I'm a kid, I wasn't connecting all of that. So I go home, telling my parents, I'm like, yo, I just found out I can't be the president of the United States. And my parents are like, why? I was like, well, my teacher said it. My dad makes this face like, what? He's like, wait. So he's like, tell me what happened, right? So I'm like, we're talking in school, we're talking about what we want to be. I'm like, yeah, Bill Clinton's president. We have the same birthday. I want to be president of the United States too. And my teacher tells me that I can't be the president of the United States. And they're like, did they tell you why? And I was like, no, but it's probably because I was born in another country. And my parents were like, did you tell your teacher you're born in another country? And I was like, no. It's like, no, I never told them that. And they're like, and also you were born on an Air Force base. So that's considered US soil, so you can be. And then my dad, it hit him like, I know what this is, right? And so my dad finally, he had that conversation with me about the history of racism and the transatlantic slave trade and Jim Crow and all those things, and how what white supremacy is and how racism comes up, right? And so he had that conversation with me, and actually what he had me do was read and write a report on the the autobiography of Malcolm X, right? And so that was like my dad's way of trying to educate me about how other people understand and perceive Blackness, and then how to equip me and prepare me to be able to move and navigate through those spaces.
Now we're going to kind of get into more like interview style questions.
Okay.
What are your strengths and weaknesses, but specifically in design and in creating?
My strengths, I think I have a great imagination. Luckily, think that has not been removed from me. So I think I have a great imagination. I like to observe, right? And I think observation is a major skill for all designers. And it might be something that we don't think about a lot, is how well do you take in what's around you and how well do you notice and take notice. I like to infuse narrative, I think, a lot into my design and in my art. And I like to also I think because I'm good at engaging people and connecting with folks, I think that also makes the way in which that I present in my art and the way I create, I think that makes it unique. There are some practical pieces though, right, that are not the greatest. So I can admit that, right, like when I was in my design courses in school, because a lot of the classes I took, I felt like they didn't really reflect what I was trying to learn, or, I didn't maybe, value some of the stuff in the same way. Back then, there's some things that I just didn't learn, right? Also, I was an art and technology major. So there's tons of studio courses that I didn't actually take. So I never actually took like a printmaking or a painting. I took like a drawing studio. I took a video production course. I did some like coding and things of that. But there's a lot of things in the physical art, in the studio art realm, that I'm just kind of teaching myself. So there may be techniques and things that I don't necessarily know that can make the creation of my art easier, right? Or that might help me convey something in a different way or a little bit easier. But again, I think for me, a lot of my artwork tends to be more performance art based, right? Or there's some type of performance or conversation that's kind of tied to it. And so I see it more as like the art is meant to spark a conversation, or it's meant to act as like it captures a moment that we had. And so as long as it successfully captures that moment, it's been kind of fine. But yeah, there's that piece of me that's like, I wish I had a little bit more knowledge of some of the skills. So yeah.
What's your process?
My process typically starts with music. Typically what happens is either music or like a really dope conversation. And so there's either a song that's playing, and then I tend to just put that song on repeat. And as that song is playing and I'm in my headphones, eyes are closed, right? Like my mind, I start to like imagine just these different things, these different feelings, colors, shapes, right? Or I start to imagine these different scenarios and I start to try to put them together. And I try to interpret what do I want that image to look like and become, right? And then I tend to go to my sketchbook, like my paper sketchbook a lot. Then I kind of like doodle a little bit until something comes together. I've been loving my iPad though lately, and using Procreate. That's been a really cool, dope thing to use, right? So like I'll draw something out maybe on paper, but then a lot of times I'll just go into Procreate and I'll start out by like, okay, let's just make some block shapes, some random colors here, right? Kind of block things out. And flatting, for some reason, I just kind of like learned about flatting with a lot of comic book art type of stuff, right? And I love it. I don't know why flatting is fun to me, but like you take your line art, you drop your flat colors in there, and just kind of go with it. So that's a part typically my process, right? Is going through that kind of phase. So I think it allows me to do like the methodical kind of thing. And it's that good gap between, okay, I was just being creative and came up with my image. Now I get to like meticulously flat it out for a moment, give my creativity a break in a sense, right? And then I can come back and be, okay, how do I actually want to color it, bring in values and all that stuff into it. So that's typically it. But then I think the other way in which I create, which is kind of more on the experiential side, is through conversation all the time, right? Like I have conversations with people, and what I start to do is I just keep asking questions and ask questions and ask questions and ask questions, and the more we ask these different questions, the more I start to envision, right, like what creating this scenario would look like. And so then I typically go to my dry erase board and I start plotting things out, and then boom, this great experiential learning moment is made.
And lastly, what are your goals, short-term and long-term?
Goals. Short-term goals, right, are again to get my gallery show going, right? Also, I realized like I really want to kind of make a connection to the art scene here in Iowa, right? I think there's a beauty in being connected with the space that you're in, right? Like, yes, our social media and online allows you to go far reaches, right? But like, I think I'm really valuing local community in a different way now. And so those are my short-term goals. Long-term goal is I would love to one day have my own art community center where my studio and gallery are part of it. I'm able to do lessons and classes and stuff with young people to help them find their voice, right? And kind of building on my no self kind of stuff and what I'm going to try to do within my PhD program, and still, be connected with colleges and universities, maybe teach a couple courses, but then also be able to create different pipelines and things for students or young people who are in my program, right, to get connected with colleges, universities, or just to launch off into their own entrepreneurial art and creative kind of fields. So yeah, that's like my long-term goal, is to have my own community center based in the arts.
That's sweet.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover, that we didn't touch on, that you really think is like vital or important, or do you just have any reactions to my project in general?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I hope people understand, especially in the design and the creative space, right, is that like everything that we experience in the world is designed. It is created, right? So that means all the oppressive systems in our world, they were created, right? Nothing is just happening to people. And I think I think there are people who don't, value that or think about that like they should. They don't really recognize that, wait, no, we create schools that mirror prisons, right? And they're structured to already mentally and physically prepare young people who attend those schools to go into our prisons, right? And so as much as that's designed and created and intentional, I think there's the power of design and art, right, and imagination to liberate people. And so my hope is that what people realize is that they not only dismantle some of these places, these systems and these structures, right, but they have to envision and have the imagination that can replace it, right, and replace it with something that is equitable, something that is going to fuel you, protect you, love you, care for you, right, nurture you, and nurture other. And the you, right, who we're defining as the you in that sentence, right, is really important. And so, but I think art, design, creativity, creating in general, right, has the power to be liberative and to liberate people. So yeah, this project I think is pretty cool. Just the idea of being able to talk, I think a piece for me, especially in this position, folks don't know that I actually have an art background. A lot of times, they know that, okay, he probably does equity inclusion stuff, but people don't always know my history necessarily with art and design. And so I think this is a cool opportunity to be able to share that about myself and connect with folks a little bit more in this community.
Sweet. Thanks, Jordan.
Dope. Awesome.
It was an honor and privilege to have you on our podcast today, Jordan. Again, please go follow this man. He is just such an uplifter. You just feel it. It's contagious. Also, not sure if you guys could tell, but you probably could. Originally, this podcast was supposed to be a video interview, and therefore, I had to change the format so it was more audio focused. So I hope that the listening experience was enjoyable, and if you're curious about learning more about diverse people of design, don't forget to check out our SoundCloud for our other podcast. It's /diverse people of design, or we got Instagram, diverse people of design, or diverse pod on Twitter and Facebook. And lastly, if you love us and you'd like to support us on Patreon, you can also find us there. So all in all, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.